I was in the ICU when my sister told the doctor, "Stop the treatment. We can't waste money on him." She redirected my insurance payout to her own account. But she didn't know I had a copy of every document she signed. Hey Reddit. My name's Jonah. I'm 30. I'm a paramedic, licensed, full-time with the city fire department, pulling in about $72,000 a year with overtime. I've been on the truck for 7 years. I've intubated people in the back of a moving ambulance at 2 a.m., held pressure on a wound while a teenager screamed for his mother, and once performed CPR on a man for 42 minutes straight until the hospital team took over. He lived. I tell you this because in about 10 minutes you're going to hear about someone trying to let me die in a hospital bed to collect an insurance payout, and I need you to understand the kind of person I am before I tell you about the kind of person my sister turned out to be. My sister Lena is 35. She's a hairstylist, owns a small salon called Lux on the east side, takes home about $38,000 on a good year, less on a bad one. She has a daughter, Maya, who's 6 and who I love more than most things on this planet, which is relevant because it's one of the reasons I let Lena get as close as she did. When you love someone's kid, you give their parent the benefit of the doubt longer than you should. Lena was married to a guy named Craig for 4 years and went through what she described as a devastating divorce about 2 years before everything I'm about to tell you. I was there for that divorce. I was there. I drove her to the lawyer's office. I sat with her while she cried about Craig taking everything. I co-signed her apartment lease because her credit was wrecked, or at least she said it was. I lent her $8,000 to cover her first 3 months of rent plus security deposit, $2,400 per month rent on a 2-bedroom she said was the cheapest she could find near Maya's school, plus $1,200 deposit. I worked extra shifts for 2 months to cover that money, 3 overnight shifts a week instead of 2, which at $72,000 base means I was pulling 60-hour weeks on an ambulance to fund my sister's fresh start. I never asked for the $8,000 back because she was my sister and she was struggling, and that's what you do. At least that's what I told myself. Except she wasn't struggling. I found out later, much later, that the divorce settlement gave Lena $94,000. $94,000. She hid every cent. Court records, which my lawyer Ray eventually pulled, showed the settlement was agreed upon without contest in under 3 weeks. No fighting, no drama, no drawn-out custody battle. They split it clean because they'd already agreed on the numbers before the paperwork was filed. The devastating divorce was theater, and I was the audience. She told me she got basically nothing. She cried about it at my kitchen table while I wrote her a check for $8,000 that I earned at 60 hours a week on an ambulance. The lease cosign, the borrowed money, the emotional support, all of it was performed so I would feel responsible for her, so I would add her to my bank account for emergencies, so I would list her as my emergency contact at work because, who else would you list, Jonah? Mom's an hour and a half away. Every ask was reasonable in isolation. Together, they were a blueprint. Here's what I mean by blueprint. Over the 2 years between her divorce and my accident, Lena collected the following access points. She was on my bank account as an authorized user. She was my emergency contact at the fire department. She had a copy of my insurance card, which she'd photographed so Maya's pediatrician has it in case you ever take her to an appointment. She had a key to my apartment. She knew the name of my insurance provider, my policy number, my employer's HR contact, and the process for filing disability claims because she'd helped me organize my benefits paperwork when I first got the policy. Each thing, by itself, was a sister helping her brother. All of them together was a woman building the infrastructure to access my entire life if I ever couldn't stop her. I need to tell you about the fireproof envelope before anything else makes sense. About 2 years before the accident, I was going through a period where I was getting my life organized. Updated my will, named my mom Dolores as my power of attorney, got a life insurance policy through work, the standard stuff you do when you ride in ambulances for a living and the odds aren't always in your favor. During that process, something nagged at me. I can't explain it fully. It was a feeling, not a thought. A weight in my chest when I imagined Lena handling things if something happened to me. I couldn't name it. I couldn't justify it to anyone. But I took my original insurance policy, my real power of attorney naming my mother, and a handwritten note, sealed them in a fireproof envelope, drove to my mother's house, and handed it to her. The note said, "If anything happens to me, don't let anyone touch this until I wake up or until you talk to my lawyer." If Lena tries to handle anything, call Ray immediately. Ray is my lawyer. I don't remember exactly why I wrote it like that. I don't remember what made me single Lena out by name. But some part of me knew something the rest of me wasn't ready to say out loud. March 9th. I was on a call, two-vehicle accident on the highway, rush hour, rain. While helping extract a passenger from the back seat of a sedan that had been T-boned at 45 miles an hour, the vehicle shifted on the wet asphalt. The door frame caught me across the chest and pinned me against the guardrail. I don't remember the impact. I remember the sound, a crunch that I felt in my teeth, and then I was on the ground looking at the sky wondering why the clouds were spinning. I remember Torres's face above mine. I remember him saying, "Stay with me, Reyes." I remember thinking, I'm usually the one who says that. Flail chest. 3 fractured ribs on the left side. Punctured lung. Internal bleeding that they didn't find until I was already on the table. They intubated me in the field, which is a sentence that means a lot more when you're usually the one doing the intubating. I was in surgery for 4 hours and then moved to the ICU, where they put me in a medically induced coma for what turned out to be 9 days. 9 days where I didn't exist. 9 days where the people around my bed got to decide what version of me the world would see. And one of those people decided the most useful version was the dead one. I was unconscious. Everything I'm about to tell you about those 9 days comes from hospital records, security logs, witness statements, and the 12-day personal log kept by an ICU nurse named Mara who felt something was wrong from day 2 and started writing things down. Day 1. Lena arrived at the hospital before my mother did. She told the front desk she was my emergency contact and next of kin. Both were true on paper because I'd listed her when I first joined the department and never updated it. She told the nurses she was handling everything for the family. She brought flowers. She cried at my bedside. She posted an Instagram story with my hand in hers, and the caption, "Praying for my brother. God, please." Day 2. According to Mara's log, Lena spent 45 minutes at the billing department. She asked about my insurance coverage, my employer's disability policy, and the process for filing claims on behalf of an incapacitated family member. Mara noted, "Sister asking a lot of financial questions for someone whose brother just got out of surgery." Day 3, Lena went to a notary. Not the hospital notary. An outside notary, a woman who was a regular client at Lena's salon. She came back with a notarized power of attorney document listing herself as my healthcare proxy and financial decision maker. The document was forged. My signature was on it. I was in a coma. Mara's log for day 3. New paperwork submitted to admin POA now lists sister. I thought his mother was listed. Something changed. Day 4, Lena contacted my insurance company. She submitted a disability claim and a form redirecting the payout to an account she controlled. But here's where it gets calculated in a way that still makes my skin crawl. She submitted 2 separate document packages. One went to the hospital. It described me as incapacitated with no realistic recovery prognosis and authorized her to make treatment decisions including compassionate reduction of aggressive interventions. Translation: let him go. The other went to the insurance company. It described me as expected to recover but requiring long-term family-managed care and authorized a living disability payout instead of a death benefit. 2 contradictory stories. She told the hospital I was dying, so they'd let her control my treatment. She told the insurance company I was recovering, so they'd process a living payout she could collect immediately instead of waiting for a death claim. She needed me dead enough to control, alive enough to cash. Day 5, she told Dr. Chun, my attending physician, that the family had discussed it and they wanted to reduce aggressive treatment because they couldn't afford the extended ICU stay. Dr. Chin asked if my insurance covered it. Lena said it was complicated. It wasn't complicated. My insurance covered everything. She knew that because she'd already filed the claim. She was trying to get my treatment reduced while simultaneously collecting the money that was supposed to pay for it. Dr. Chin paused. He told my lawyer later that something felt wrong, but he couldn't articulate it. Hospital policy requires a 24-hour confirmation period before family-requested treatment changes in ICU patients. He initiated the waiting period. That 24-hour window is the reason I'm alive. Not skill. Not luck. Policy. A rule in a binder somewhere that says you wait 1 day before you let someone's sister kill them with paperwork. Day 6. Lena was in the hallway outside the ICU when she spotted Torres. Torres is a paramedic from my station, been on the truck 2 years longer than me, the kind of guy who doesn't say much but notices everything. He wasn't at the hospital visiting me. He was in the ER himself, broken wrist from a call the night before, a patient who thrashed during a seizure and caught Torres's hand against the gurney rail. He almost didn't come in. He told me later his wrist felt sore, but not broken, and he was going to ice it at home. His wife Carla told him, just go get it checked. Don't be stubborn. So he went. That decision, made by a woman who doesn't know me and has never been to my apartment and will probably never understand the full weight of what she did, is the reason I'm alive. Lena saw Torres's uniform before she saw his face. She approached him in the hallway, introduced herself as my sister, smiled the way she smiles when she wants something, and said she was handling all the logistics while I recovered and that the family needs privacy during this time. She asked him, gently, warmly, to let the crew at the station know that any visits should be coordinated through her first. Torres thought it was strange. Nobody coordinates hospital visits through a family member like they're scheduling a conference room. He told me later, she was too organized about it. Too smooth. It felt like she was managing a guest list, not a crisis. He filed it away and went to wait for his x-ray. The ER waiting area at our hospital is adjacent to the billing department. There's a row of chairs against a half wall, and on the other side of that wall is the billing desk where families sort out insurance and payment. Torres was sitting in one of those chairs, scrolling his phone, when he heard a voice he recognized. Lena's. She was on the phone at the billing desk, and she wasn't whispering. Torres heard her confirm account details for an insurance payout redirect. He heard her say, the treatment costs are unsustainable and the family has decided to transition to comfort-level care. He heard her read off an account number that, even without checking, he knew wasn't mine because he'd processed my direct deposit paperwork at the station and recognized the bank name she was giving didn't match. And then he heard her ask, how quickly after the claim is approved can the funds be transferred? Torres didn't go home after his x-ray. He sat in his truck in the parking garage for 10 minutes, then called Captain Briggs. Briggs asked 2 questions. Is Jonah's mother aware of this? And are you sure about what you heard? Torres said no and yes. Briggs called my mother. My mother Dolores is 64 years old. She taught Sunday school for 20 years and quit only because her knees stopped letting her stand for 2 hours. She makes tamales at Christmas and gives them to everyone on her block, including the neighbors she doesn't like, because even difficult people deserve tamales. She's the kind of woman who apologizes when other people step on her foot and sends thank you cards for thank you cards. When Briggs called her and said, "Ma'am, your son is stable and recovering in the ICU," my mother didn't understand the sentence. There was a silence on the line that Briggs later described to me as the quietest sound I've ever heard. Then she said, "That's not possible. Lena told me his brain stopped 3 days ago. She said we're deciding when to say goodbye. I've been sitting in my living room writing his eulogy. For 3 days, my mother had been mourning a son who was alive and improving 1 floor above the woman who was filing claims on his body. Dolores had called her sister, told her to start driving. She'd picked out clothes for a funeral. She'd sat at her kitchen table and tried to write something to say about her youngest child and couldn't finish because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 days. Because Lena needed Dolores out of the way while she worked. Briggs said, "Ma'am, I spoke to his doctor 20 minutes ago. Jonah is breathing on his own. He is not brain dead. He's expected to recover. I need you to come to the hospital right now, and I need you to bring any documents Jonah may have given you." My mother drove 90 minutes and 55. She told me later she doesn't remember the drive. She remembers leaving the house, and she remembers the hospital parking garage and nothing in between. She didn't come empty-handed. She brought the fireproof envelope. She hadn't opened it in 2 years, but she remembered exactly where it was because I told her it was important, and Dolores doesn't forget things her children tell her are important. She walked into the hospital administration office, opened the envelope in front of the patient advocate, and placed 3 documents on the desk. My original insurance policy listing Dolores as beneficiary, my real power of attorney naming Dolores as decision-maker, and the handwritten note that said, "If Lena tries to handle anything, call Ray immediately." The patient advocate looked at the documents, looked at the forged POA Lena had submitted on day 3, and picked up the phone. By the time Lena came back from the cafeteria carrying a yogurt and a magazine, There were two hospital administrators, the patient advocate, and a hospital security officer waiting at the nursing station. They informed her that her power of attorney had been invalidated, that her access to my medical decisions was revoked, and that she was restricted to supervised visits only. Lena's face went through 4 expressions in about 3 seconds: confusion, calculation, anger, and then the one she always defaults to when cornered, crying. She said she was just trying to help. She said there was a misunderstanding. She asked to speak to Dr. Chun. They said no. I woke up on day 9. The first thing I saw was my mother's face, which told me everything before she said a word, because Dolores doesn't sit in hospital chairs for 9 days unless something tried to take her son away. She looked like she'd aged 5 years. She looked like she hadn't slept. She looked like a woman who'd written a eulogy and then had to unwrite it, and that kind of thing leaves marks on a face that don't come off. She told me everything. Slowly. Over 2 days. She'd start, then stop, then leave the room for 10 minutes, then come back and continue from where she left off. She told me about the call from Briggs, about the 3 days she spent thinking I was brain dead, about the drive, about the envelope, about walking into the administration office and watching the patient advocate's face change as she compared the real documents to the forged ones. She told me about Lena being escorted away from the nursing station carrying a yogurt and a magazine, and how Lena's first response was to cry, and how Dolores stood in the hallway watching her daughter perform grief for an audience of administrators and felt something inside her close like a door. I listened without interrupting because the pain medication made it hard to talk, and also because there was nothing to say that would make any of it make sense. Your sister tried to let you die for money. There's no sentence in any language that makes that sentence smaller. Ray, my lawyer, started building the case while I was still in the hospital bed. He set up a folding table in my room and worked there for 3 afternoons because he said the case was too time-sensitive to wait for you to get discharged. And honestly, Jonah, I've been waiting to use that fireproof envelope since the day you handed it to your mother. Ray is the kind of lawyer who bills $300 an hour and charges me $150 because he says I'm the reason he went into law. I'm not, but I don't argue with a man who's saving me $150 an hour. He pulled everything. The forged POA, the insurance redirect forms, the 2 contradictory document packages, the one telling the hospital I was dying and the one telling the insurance company I was recovering. He pulled Mara's 12-day log, which the hospital provided after the patient advocate flagged the case internally. He pulled phone records showing Lena's calls to the insurance company, 6 calls over 4 days, each one longer than the last. He pulled bank records. The bank records are where the staged divorce unraveled. Lena's accounts showed the $94,000 settlement she'd claimed she basically never received. It was there, split across 2 accounts, invested and growing while she cried at my kitchen table about being broke. The $8,000 I lent her was still traceable in the joint account she'd asked to be added to for emergencies. She'd never needed it. She needed the access it gave her. The co-signed lease, the borrowed money, the emergency contact status, all of it was infrastructure. She was building access points to my life the way someone wires a building before they flip the switch. The insurance claim she'd filed would have paid out $240,000 in disability benefits. She'd redirected it to a personal account I didn't know existed. If Torres hadn't broken his wrist, if Briggs hadn't called my mother, if Dolores hadn't brought the envelope, if hospital policy didn't require a 24-hour wait on treatment changes, if any single one of those things hadn't happened exactly when it did, Lena would have collected $240,000 and I would have died in a hospital bed from a treatment reduction ordered by my own sister. And Dr. Chin confirmed it. During the investigation, he provided testimony that the treatment reduction Lena requested, if implemented, would have resulted in progressive sepsis within 48 to 72 hours, and that, without the aggressive antibiotic regimen, the patient's survival probability drops to approximately 15%. 15%. He looked at me when he said it, then looked away. He told Ray privately that he came within hours of initiating the reduction. The 24-hour policy saved my life. He was already preparing the modified treatment plan when Briggs called. 15%. My sister walked into a doctor's office and requested a treatment plan that gave me a 15% chance of surviving, and she did it while posting Instagram prayers and bringing flowers for the nurses. Mara's log became the prosecution's backbone. 12 days, time-stamped, handwritten on her phone during breaks and after shifts. She documented every visit Lena made to the billing department, every conversation she overheard, every form she saw submitted, and every time Lena was at my bedside versus every time she was in the administrative wing. The ratio was approximately 30/70. 30% bedside, 70% paperwork. The nurse who was supposed to be caring for me was instead caring about why my sister spent more time with accountants than with her dying brother. Ray filed criminal charges: forgery, insurance fraud, attempted theft of benefits, filing false medical authorization, and the big one, reckless endangerment, because the treatment reduction request, if followed, would have likely resulted in death. The DA's office reviewed Dr. Chin's testimony and the 2 contradictory document packages and agreed to prosecute. Lena's lawyer tried 3 defenses in rapid succession during the pretrial hearings. First, she was acting in good faith as a concerned family member. Ray presented the forged POA and the 2 contradictory document sets. Defense dropped. Second, the insurance redirect was a clerical error. Ray presented bank records showing the receiving account was opened by Lena 2 weeks before my accident. Defense dropped. Third, the family had verbally agreed to treatment decisions. Ray presented Dolores's testimony that she was told her son was brain dead and was never consulted about any medical decision. Defense dropped. Mid-trial, after the contradictory documents were entered as evidence and Dr. Chin's testimony about the 15% survival rate was read into the record, Lena's lawyer requested a sidebar with the judge. He came back and announced he was withdrawing representation. He told the court his client had been materially inconsistent in her communications with him, which is lawyer language for "she lied to me about everything and I just found out in open court." Lena sat at the defense table alone. She looked at the gallery. My mother was in the front row. They made eye contact. Dolores didn't look away, didn't nod, didn't cry, just watched. Lena turned back around. I took the stand the next day. The prosecutor walked me through the timeline. I answered every question the way I'd fill out a patient care report. Clear, factual, no emotion that wasn't earned. The prosecutor's last question was, "Mr. Reyes, what do you want from this proceeding?" I said, "I want my insurance money returned to the correct account. I want my medical bills covered by the policy I paid for. And I want my sister to receive exactly the amount of mercy she planned to give me in that ICU bed." Lena flinched. It was small, but I saw it. The courtroom saw it. The jury saw it. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. Lena received 36 months. The judge noted the calculated and premeditated nature of the fraud, the exploitation of a familial trust relationship, and the direct endangerment of the victim's life through the requested treatment reduction. He said one other thing I'll never forget. He looked at Lena and said, "The court notes that the defendant's brother survived not because of the defendant's actions, but in spite of them, and that his survival is attributable to the intervention of third parties who recognized what the defendant's own family did not." Lena didn't react. She stared at the table the way she'd stared at it since her lawyer walked out. Craig, who had helped structure the financial pipeline through the staged divorce and received a portion of the hidden settlement funds, was charged separately and received 14 months plus 2 years probation. His cooperation during the investigation, confirming that the divorce was engineered to generate a hidden settlement, reduced his sentence but didn't eliminate it. He told investigators that Lena approached him about the arrangement, that she'd planned the financial separation before the marriage was even in trouble, and that his share of the settlement was payment for his silence and participation. The marriage, the divorce, the tears, the custody arrangement, all of it was a business deal. And I funded the transition costs with $8,000 I earned on overtime. The insurance payout was frozen, reversed, and reissued to the correct account, mine, with Dolores listed as beneficiary as it always should have been. My medical bills were covered in full by the policy I'd been paying into for 7 years. The forged documents were entered into a state fraud database. Lena's salon license was revoked as part of the sentencing conditions. The notary who stamped the forged POA was referred to the state licensing board for notarizing a document signed by a person who was in a medically induced coma at the time of notarization, which is, and I cannot stress this enough, not how notarization works. Dolores updated her will 2 weeks after sentencing. She removed one name and added one sentence. Ray told me the legal language was, my daughter Lena Reyes is intentionally excluded from this will for reasons she is aware of and which are documented in case number 2024 CF 01847. She didn't discuss it with me. She didn't discuss it with anyone. She just called Ray, gave him the instruction, and signed the revision the same afternoon. I found out when Ray mentioned it during a case wrap-up call. I asked him how she sounded on the phone. He said, like a woman who'd made a decision a long time ago and was just now putting it on paper. Where things stand now. Lena is serving her sentence. The salon is closed. The $94,000 from the staged divorce is frozen in a restitution account. Maya is living with Craig's mother, who by all accounts is a decent woman who had nothing to do with any of this and is giving that little girl the stability her mother never prioritized. Lena's Instagram, the one where she posted prayers for me while forging my signature downstairs, was deactivated by someone, maybe her, maybe Craig's family, the week after sentencing. Craig got 14 months. He cooperated partially during the investigation, confirmed the divorce was structured to generate a settlement that would be hidden from family, and acknowledged receiving funds from Lena. His cooperation reduced his sentence but didn't eliminate it. Last I heard, he's on probation and working at a distribution warehouse. Dolores sold the tamale recipe to no one and still makes them at Christmas. She visits me every Sunday. We don't talk about Lena unless there's a legal update. When there is, she listens, nods, and changes the subject to something she saw on television. She processes things in her own time and in her own way, and I've learned to let her. Mara, the ICU nurse, sent me a card when I was discharged. It said, "Glad you woke up." Glad I wrote it down. I keep it in my locker at the station. I've never met her in person outside the hospital. She probably doesn't know she's the reason the prosecution had a day-by-day timeline. I'll thank her properly someday. Torres got his wrist healed in 6 weeks. He came back to active duty before I did. He doesn't talk about what he overheard much, except once at a station barbecue when someone asked him about it, and he said, "I almost didn't go to the ER that day. My wrist didn't seem that bad. My wife made me go." His wife is named Carla. 8 months after the trial, I sent her flowers with a card that said, "Thank you for making him go." Torres told me later she stared at the card for a long time and then said, "I don't understand this." Torres said, "You don't have to. Just know that it matters." She put the flowers on the kitchen table and didn't throw the card away. Me, I'm back on the truck. Full medical clearance took for months. Physical therapy 3 times a week for the ribs. Lung capacity back to 94%, which is enough to do the job and enough to stop worrying. Ray handled everything on the legal side and charged me half his normal rate because he said the fireproof envelope was the most satisfying piece of evidence I've presented in 15 years of practice. I see a counselor once a month. Not because I'm broken, because my sister tried to kill me with a stack of forms while I was unconscious, and I think that warrants professional processing. The handwritten note. The one in the fireproof envelope. The one that said, "If Lena tries to handle anything, call Ray immediately." I've read it a dozen times since I woke up. It's my handwriting. My words. But I don't remember writing it. I don't remember what specific moment made me feel the need. Something in me knew before the rest of me could say it out loud. Some instinct, some pattern recognition buried deep enough that I couldn't bring it to the surface, but clear enough that I picked up a pen and wrote my sister's name as a warning on a piece of paper and sealed it in a fireproof envelope and handed it to the one person I trusted completely. That note saved my life. I wrote it, and it saved me, and I still don't fully understand why I wrote it. Maybe that's the part I'll never figure out. Maybe I don't need to. For months after the trial, I'm cleared. I'm back. First shift. The station smells the same. Coffee that's been on the burner too long, diesel from the bay, the particular chemical smell of freshly laundered turnout gear. Torres nods at me from across the apparatus floor. Briggs shakes my hand once and says, "Welcome back, Reyes." Doesn't say anything else. Doesn't need to. First call comes in at 11:14 a.m. 2-vehicle accident, intersection, 1 patient complaining of chest pain. We roll. I'm in the back. Gloves on. Monitor ready. For bag in hand. The patient is an older woman, maybe 60, conscious, scared. She's gripping the gurney rail so hard her knuckles are white. She looks at me and says, "Am I going to be okay?" I've heard that question 1,000 times. I've answered it 1,000 times. But I said yes. and it came out different than it used to. Heavier. More honest. Because I know what it's like to be on that gurney now. I know what it sounds like when the monitor beeps. I know what it feels like to have someone decide whether you live or die while you can't open your eyes. First call. First patient. She asked if she was going to be okay. I said yes. And for the first time since the ICU, I believed the answer when it came out of my own mouth. Anyway, that's the whole thing. Appreciate you staying till the end. Subscribe if you want more of these on the way.